Hundreds of travellers from Thailand have finally arrived in Melbourne after spending almost 7 hours stranded on the tarmac at Alice Springs Airport. A medical emergency forced the Jetstar plane to land in the Red Centre yesterday morning before a mechanical fault left it unable to take off again.
As the plane suffered issues with the air conditioning and in-flight entertainment, frustration grew among the passengers, unable to disembark because the airport lacked customs facilities. A deal was eventually reached and a replacement flight arranged, which finally touched down in Melbourne last night. Well, one of those passengers who was on board was Paul Turan. He joins us now from Melbourne. G'day, Paul. How are you feeling this morning?
Morning, Lisa. How are you?
Well, I'm good, but I didn't spend 7 hours on the ground and double that in the air, not being able to go anywhere.
It's 7 hours stuck in the plane, actually, not on the ground, so that was pretty horrific.
So, have you had much sleep?
3 hours.
Right. Was there anything, do you think, that Jetstar could have done to avoid this situation?
Firstly, I need to say that my thoughts and wishes are for the ill patient that was evacuated from the flight, because that was the main concern. The maintenance issue, I guess Jetstar have a reputation of cutting back and outsourcing maintenance. Maybe they should look at their profits and invest some of that in maintenance. We may not have as many of these issues.
What was the mood like on the plane? We got a sense of it from the video that you yourself were taking.
People were pretty annoyed with the lack of communication. We sat on the plane for 7.5 hours, not able to leave because of some custom issues at the Alice Springs Airport. But that was resolved when the plane ran out of electricity and there was no air conditioning, and it was like a sweatbox in there. So they eventually let us into the small terminal at Alice Springs where most people were on the floor. The staff there at the airport were very helpful, I must say. Very friendly and helpful, with much better communication than anyone from Jetstar. The cabin crew couldn't tell us anything.
What have you heard from Jetstar now?
I've received an email last night apologising and offering people a $200 credit voucher.
Is that good enough for you?
Well, I think people should get a full refund for that. The full refund for that fare that they've paid, because it was pretty disgraceful that we just sat there for hours and hours, and there was guys there with bad backs. They couldn't move out of the seats to walk around. There was babies crying, elderly people. I don't think it was a lot more unpleasant for them than what it was for me.
What kind of price tag were we talking about for that flight, out of interest?
About $400. It wasn't expensive, but it's more so the principle. I know people on the same flight paid in excess of $1,000, but I got mine cheap.
So what happens now, Paul?
What happens now is I'm about to go into the office for the first time in 3 years, so I'm going to make something positive out of this.
Well, you've certainly got some stories to tell, but as you're right, the very first thing we should be thinking of is that patient who was taken off and the reason the plane landed in the first place. It's been a rough old night for you.
I think our thoughts should be with him, because we're still all alive and kicking. Might have been a bit inconvenient, but things could have been a lot worse.
All right. Paul Turan, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Lisa. Have a great day.
Thanks. And
Jetstar has released a statement this morning. I'll quote from part of it. The airline says safety is always our first priority. We thank passengers for their understanding and apologise to them for the impact to their journey when they had to divert to Alice Springs to support a passenger requiring urgent medical care, and our thoughts are with that passenger. Being a domestic flight, Alice Springs does not have the customs processing facilities, and when there were further delays as a result of an electrical fault while the aircraft was on the ground, we worked with the border agencies, the NT Police and the local airport authority to give passengers the option to disembark into a specially partitioned section of the airport. But as Paul says, you know, it's not great for anybody to be stuck on a plane for 7 hours. All those passengers are still alive. Give me a safety check any day over a delay. And again, we keep stressing our thoughts with this patient who was taken off in a quite serious way.
Yeah, and anyone who's had awful plane stories are probably now being triggered with all the memories. I spent many hours on a tarmac once in America because they thought a passenger on board had SARS, so they wouldn't let anyone off. It was a long flight.